do I really need another fuzz pedal? And the answer is yes, of course I do, particularly when it's as good sounding and as versatile as this one. This is the new KGB Fuzz from Valco. Now, Valco described this pedal as a multi-function tone sculpting fuzz machine, and you can certainly do a lot with it. You can get all of the classic flavours of fuzz from this pedal, and it's also got a couple of extra more unusual features which really add to its versatility. And the name of the pedal, KGB, stands for keyboards, guitar and bass. And that indicates that as well as using it as a traditional guitar pedal, you can also use it as a kind of multi-purpose studio tool. And I can certainly see myself using this on both keyboards and bass, maybe on synths, vocals, drums as well, pretty much anything. So very useful pedal. I'm going to take you through all of the functions in just a moment, but let me begin by having a bit of a play. Let's look at the basic layout of this pedal then, and it's elegantly done. I think the pedal looks great and there's lots of functionality without things getting too complicated and cluttered. So along the bottom we've got output, tone and fuzz, and that's pretty self-explanatory. There is a lot of output in this pedal, plenty of volume to give you a nice boost if you're taking a guitar solo, lots of volume to push the front end of your amp hard. And during this demo I'm actually not really going above 3 or 4 on the output, and it's still really loud in the room. Then over on the left hand side we've got this blend fader, and this is an interesting feature, and basically it's a way of mixing between the clean direct sound and the fuzz tones. So when the fader is all the way down, you've just got a clean sound. It's as if the pedal is bypassed, and then you can just gradually blend in the fuzz. And I think most of the time if I'm using this as a traditional guitar pedal, then I'll have that fader all the way up for maximum fuzz. But there are certainly some studio situations where I think this fader could be very useful, and you might want to preserve the character and the sound of the direct sound, but just blend in the right amount of fuzz. Then at the top we've got a little switch which allows you to go between a line and instrument input, and this is another useful feature. Obviously most of the time if you're using it with guitar or bass you just set that on instrument, but in the studio you might well want that option of having a line input. And if you're using it with synths or with other bits of studio gear, they don't always interface that well with traditional guitar pedals, so that line input is a nice option to have. Then over on the right hand side we've got another quite unusual feature. I've not seen this in other fuzz pedals, but it's an input impedance selector, and I'm going to be talking more about that a bit later on. But I want to start with the voice knob, and this is where you can change between the 4 basic sounds of this pedal. We've got 4 positions on the voice knob, and when it's off we're dealing with a simple 2-knob fuzz. So this is the original 60s style fuzz, and then mode number 1 is inspired by the Big Muff, and then number 2 has got a bit more mid-range, so that's more tone bendery sounding. And finally mode 3 is a bit more modern sounding, and in mode 3 you can get those spitty gated sounding fuzzes. I'm going to start with this knob in the off position. So the pedal is functioning as a classic 2-knob fuzz. The tone circuit is bypassed in this mode, and this is based on the earliest fuzz pedals, I think. So the Satisfaction pedal, whose name escapes me right now, the Maestro fuzz tone, and then quite soon after that you had the fuzz face and the earliest tone bender. So very simple classic fuzz sound. Let's hear what this sounds like. Quick guitar change to a Strat, and let's move that voice knob round to position number 1, and here we've got some Big Muff inspired sounds. Big Muffs first came out in the 1970s, lots of different models and flavours of Big Muff, but most of them have a really big bottom end and a bit of a cut in the mid frequencies. And for this reason it's a favoured rhythm guitar sound with a lot of indie types and shoegazers, because it really fills out the sound but it doesn't take up too much room in the mix, and it leaves space for vocals to sit on top. So let's have a few sounds. And there are those who say that a Big Muff doesn't work quite so well as a lead sound. To some extent I agree, but it really depends on the situation. There are some mixes which are just too dense for this kind of sound to cut through, but occasionally it can work and it can sound really good. Let's check out Fuzz Voice number 2, and this gives you a very different sound from the Big Muff. We've got a lot more mid-range, and I believe that this voice is based on a kind of tone bender circuit, so one of the tone benders with a tone control. So remember, when the voice knob is in the off position, the tone control is not active, but in all the other modes the tone control is working, but it's voiced slightly differently in each of the modes. And in this mode, definitely a bit more mid-range poke to it. So let's hear what this sounds like. So great sound, seems to work really well with the Les Paul. This one worked well with the volume control. At the start of that little example I had the volume control rolled off just to clean up the sound a little bit, and then I brought it back up for a bit more of an intense fuzz sound, and it's very touch sensitive and it's got a nice kind of pick attack sound to it as well. Then we come on to the final Fuzz Voice. This is mode number 3, and this is maybe the most modern sound. It's that gated, aggressive sounding fuzz. It's a little bit Jack White, it's a little bit Z-Vex Fuzz Factory, and that sounds like this. So there we are. I think that covers all of the basic fuzz sounds in this pedal, and all of the sounds exceptionally good, I think, and they're on a par with my dedicated Fuzz Face, Big Muff and Tone Bender pedals. And the advantage here, clearly, you've got all of the sounds in a single pedal. So obviously if you're gigging and you need multiple fuzz sounds, then this is going to be a convenient option. And also in the studio, I think it would be great if you want to quickly audition different fuzz sounds to see what works best with a particular track. It's very easy to do that. So we're just left to talk about this impedance control, which I think is a fantastic feature and just adds another level of versatility to this pedal. And it's not something I've seen on other fuzz pedals. I don't know if there are other fuzz pedals out there with an impedance selector, but I've not seen them. And I was going to try and fake my way through this and pretend that I know all of the ins and outs of impedance and I've got all the science absolutely nailed, but I think you'd see straight through that, and that's not the case. I've still not got any clue about impedance from a scientific point of view, but the way I think of it is it's just another kind of tone control, and you can clearly hear the difference that this control makes. I think a simple way to think about it is it's a way of fine-tuning the way your guitar interacts with the pedal, and in particular the way the pickups interact with the pedal. And you might well have found a situation where you've got a fuzz pedal and it sounds great with a Strat into a certain amp, but then you try another guitar, maybe a guitar with humbuckers, and suddenly the pedal doesn't sound so good. And one of the reasons is different impedance values between humbuckers and single coils. So really what you can do is use your ears to dial in the impedance control to suit your guitar and your amp. And that's all I've been doing here. Generally I've found that I prefer the lower impedance values. That seems to give a bit more of a rounded vintage style tone. It works well with guitars with single coil pickups. With the Les Paul, I think I was turning up the impedance by a notch or two, and that just seems to make the sound a little bit brighter. And when you go to very high impedance values, you seem to get a little bit more fuzz, and the fuzz tone is a little bit more modern and a little bit more cutting. So you can quite clearly hear the difference this impedance selector makes if you just turn down the blend fader. And then we're just listening to the direct guitar signal, so no fuzz, but the signal is still going through that impedance circuitry. So you can hear that with the impedance at its lowest setting, it's quite a mellow sound. And then as I nudge up the impedance control, it's just becoming brighter, and the transient response is changing. You just got a bit more attack to some of these notes until on the highest impedance setting, so let's hear how this works with the fuzz. And this is the fuzz all the way up the lowest impedance setting. So you can hear quite a massive difference there, and it's going from quite a mellow, vintage sounding fuzz through to a very cutting, in your face, modern sounding fuzz. And you've got lots of options there. Obviously it's going to depend on your personal taste and the context, which one of those settings you prefer. So there we are. I think I'm all fuzzed out now. That's the KGB pedal from Valco. I think it's an excellent sounding pedal, but there are a lot of excellent sounding fuzz pedals out there. So what might put this one towards the top of your list if you're on the lookout for a new fuzz pedal, I think, is the fact that it can give you all of those classic fuzz tones in a single pedal. It's very versatile. Also, perhaps if you're a producer looking for a useful studio tool, this should be something you should check out. Thanks for watching. I know I don't do that many of these gear-based videos, but if you enjoyed this and you'd like to see more of it, then let me know, and I can try and get hold of some more pedals, amps, etc., and put them through their paces. My main focus is still, of course, going to be on the weekly tutorial video, but from time to time I think this kind of thing is fun as well. Take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.